How Democratic governors and mayors use Marxist ideology to accumulate debt and shift the burden to the nation. Governing America as a Republic introduction. Many Democratic state governors and city mayors are accused of adopting policies rooted in Marxist ideology, promoting massive government intervention and redistributive economics. Their approach to governance often leads to unsustainable budgets and escalating debt. When these policies fail, the financial burden is frequently passed on to the broader American taxpayer through federal bailouts and stimulus packages. This essay examines how these practices accumulate debt and the measures necessary to combat them to maintain sound governance within the principles of the American Republic. Marxist ideology and governance. Marxist principles emphasize wealth redistribution, government ownership, and central control. In many Democrat-controlled states and cities, governance aligns with these ideals, favoring expansive social programs, generous public sector pensions, and free services, such as universal health care or tuition-free education. While these policies appeal to a vision of equity, they often result in spiraling costs. Examples include unfunded pension liabilities in cities like Chicago and New York, or California's ambitious environmental initiatives that come with heavy regulatory burdens and expenses. Rather than balancing budgets through fiscal discipline, these leaders accumulate debt, believing government spending will stimulate the economy and that debt can be redistributed or forgiven. This mirrors the Marxist concept of wealth redistribution, extracting resources from one group via taxes or federal bailouts to fund another, often prioritizing favored political or ideological agendas. Federal bailouts and the burden on national taxpayers. When democratic states accumulate unsustainable levels of debt, they often turn to the federal government for relief. For example, during economic downturns, states facing fiscal crises have relied on stimulus packages, leaving the federal government to pay for their poor financial management. These bailouts are often masked as infrastructure investment or social relief, but much of the money goes to cover budget deficits, pension shortfalls, or politically motivated projects. This forces the national taxpayer to bear the consequences of mismanagement in Democrat-run states, undermining the principle of federalism and penalizing more fiscally responsible states. Effectively, the redistribution of funds from solvent states to indebted ones mirrors the Marxist goal of redistributing wealth, transferring responsibility from one group to another under the guise of fairness and collective responsibility. Consequences of debt-driven governance. The reliance on debt-based governance fosters several harmful consequences. Moral hazard. States that know they will be bailed out have no incentive to manage their finances responsibly. Decreased economic mobility, heavy taxation, intended to fund social programs, drives businesses and residents to flee to states with lower taxes and fewer regulations, as seen with California, New York, and Illinois. Erosion of accountability. Federal bailouts allow state leaders to evade the political consequences of their financial mismanagement, weakening democratic accountability and public trust. Combating these practices. Solutions for better governance. To prevent the spread of debt-fueled governance and restore the principles of republicanism, several steps must be taken. Limit federal bailouts. Congress should implement strict conditions on any federal aid, ensuring that it is used for emergencies and not to cover budget deficits. States must be required to adopt balanced budget amendments to avoid habitual overspending. Promote fiscal federalism. The federal government should reinforce the principle of federalism by encouraging states to manage their own budgets and discouraging federal intervention in state financial matters. Responsible states should not be penalized for the fiscal irresponsibility of others. Implement public pension reform. Many Democrat-run states face pension crises due to overpromising benefits. Governments need to transition from defined benefit to defined contribution pension systems, similar to 401k plans, to make future obligations sustainable. Tax policy reform. To prevent capital flight, states must lower taxes and deregulate their economies, encouraging business growth and entrepreneurship. Reducing the dependence on high taxation and redistributive policies will foster a more stable economy and attract talent rather than driving it away. Encourage competitive governance. States must compete by implementing policies that promote growth, job creation, and fiscal responsibility. Fostering interstate competition aligns with Republican ideals, ensuring states govern in the best interest of their citizens to retain their population and economic base. Transparency and accountability. Citizen involvement in government budgeting processes is crucial. Public audits and transparency initiatives will hold state officials accountable and deter reckless spending. Restoring America's Republican principles. The Founding Fathers designed the American Republic to prevent the concentration of power and ensure fiscal responsibility. Marxist-inspired policies, however, erode these principles by fostering dependency, weakening individual accountability, and encouraging excessive government intervention. A return to limited government, individual responsibility, and federalism is essential to restoring the health of the American Republic. Governance should reflect the Republican principle that each state and municipality is responsible for its own financial health. This ensures that leaders are accountable to their voters, not reliant on federal bailouts. By empowering states to compete economically and legislatively, America can prevent the cycle of debt and dependence that characterizes Marxist policies and restore responsible governance. Conclusion. Democratic governors and mayors who adopt Marxist-inspired policies often run up unsustainable debts, expecting the federal government to bail them out, which shifts the burden onto all Americans. To combat these practices, America must recommit to the principles of fiscal responsibility, federalism, and transparency. Limiting federal bailouts, reforming tax and pension policies, and encouraging competitive governance are essential steps in securing the future of the Republic. Ultimately, governing within the framework of the Constitution will ensure that America remains a beacon of liberty and opportunity for all.